The invitation arrived in a plain white envelope. No return address. Just a red wax seal pressed with the emblem of Riverside High School's class of 2019. Maya held it up to the afternoon light streaming through her apartment window, her twin sister Aria peering over her shoulder with cautious curiosity. They had graduated 5 years ago, but the memories of those hallways still carried weight, some golden, most gray, a few pitch black. "Are we really doing this?" Aria asked, her voice carrying that familiar tremor that appeared whenever their high school years came up in conversation. She tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear, a nervous habit that hadn't changed since they were 17. Maya turned the envelope over in her hands, studying the careful calligraphy that spelled out their names. "I don't know. Part of me wants to see how everyone turned out. The other part remembers exactly why we couldn't wait to leave." The twins had been inseparable since birth, sharing not just DNA but an unspoken understanding that came from weathering the same storms. At Riverside High, they had been scholarship students in a school dominated by generational wealth and old family names. Their mother worked 3 jobs to keep them in a decent neighborhood with good schools, sacrificing everything so her daughters could have opportunities she never had. But opportunity came with a price neither of them had. Anticipated. Aria walked to their small kitchen and poured 2 glasses of water, her hands shaking slightly. "Brandon Chun will be there. You know he will. He organized the whole thing." The name hung in the air like smoke. Brandon Chun had been their tormentor-in-chief, the architect of 1,000 small cruelties that had made their junior and senior years a carefully managed hell. He never raised his voice, never threw a punch, never did anything that would leave evidence. He was too smart for that. Instead, he wielded social power like a surgeon's scalpel, cutting them away from groups, spreading rumors disguised as concerned questions, turning their isolation into entertainment for others. Maya set the invitation down on their small dining table. "That's exactly why we should go. We're not those scared girls anymore. We graduated from state with honors. We have careers. We built lives. We don't owe him our fear." But even as she said it, Maya felt the old familiar tightness in her chest. The same feeling she'd get walking into the cafeteria, knowing Brandon and his circle would be watching, judging, whispering. The feeling of being perpetually on display, perpetually found wanting. Aria sat down across from her sister, their matching brown eyes meeting with the silent communication they'd perfected over 23 years. "Do you remember the winter formal incident?" Maya's jaw tightened. How could she forget? Junior year, she'd been asked to the dance by Marcus Williams, a quiet boy from their AP chemistry class. It was the first time anyone had shown romantic interest in either of them. She'd been cautiously excited, had even bought a dress with money saved from her weekend job at the library. Then, 2 days before the dance, someone had posted screenshots in the school's anonymous gossip forum, supposedly from Marcus's phone, laughing about taking the charity case to the dance as a joke. The screenshots were fake. Marcus had been horrified and tried to explain, but the damage was done. Maya had stayed home that night, and Marcus had transferred schools the following semester. Years later, through mutual friends, they'd learned that Brandon had orchestrated the whole thing using photo editing skills and a burner account. There had been no consequences, no accountability, just the quiet satisfaction of having broken something good before it could bloom. "I remember," Maya said softly. "I also remember that we survived it. We survived all of it." Aria reached across the table and squeezed her sister's hand. "Then let's go. Let's walk into that reunion with our heads up and show everyone that we're not defined by what happened to us." 3 weeks later, Maya and Aria stood outside the Riverside Community Center, watching luxury cars pull into the parking lot. The building had been decorated with blue and gold streamers, their school colors, and a banner announcing Class of 2019, 5-year reunion hung above the entrance. Through the windows, they could see their former classmates mingling, drinks in hand, laughter echoing across the polished floors. They had dressed carefully for this moment, not to impress, but to feel strong. Maya wore simple black slacks and a crisp white blouse. Arya had chosen a navy dress that their mother had helped her pick out. Both wore small gold necklaces their mother had given them for graduation, tiny anchors to remind them who they were and where they came from. "Ready?" Maya asked, though she wasn't sure she was ready herself. "As I'll ever be," Arya replied, and together they walked toward the entrance. The moment they stepped inside, time seemed to fold in on itself. The faces had matured, the fashion had evolved, but the fundamental dynamics felt frozen in amber. The popular crowd still clustered together near the bar, their laughter too loud, their gestures too confident. The former athletes still carried themselves with that particular swagger. And there, at the center of it all, stood Brandon Chundot. He had aged well, Maya noticed with irritation. His expensive suit fit perfectly. His smile was practiced and charming, and he held court like a prince among subjects. He was telling some story that had his audience rapt, his hands gesturing animatedly. When he spotted the twins entering, his story faltered for just a fraction of a second, but his smile never wavered. "Maya, Arya?" He approached them with arms spread wide, as if greeting old friends. "I'm so glad you could make it. It wouldn't be a real reunion without everyone here." The audacity of it struck Maya like a physical blow. To be greeted with such casual warmth by someone who had made their existence miserable, as if the past could be erased with a smile and a handshake. "Brandon," Maya replied, her voice carefully neutral. She didn't extend her hand. He seemed unbothered by the coolness, turning to gesture toward the room. "We've got quite a turnout. I've been catching up with everyone. It's amazing how much people have accomplished. Sarah Chun is a pediatrician now. Marcus transferred, but I heard he's doing great at some tech startup. And you two, I heard you both graduated from State. That's wonderful." There was something in the way he emphasized State, the public university. They'd attended on scholarships that carried a subtle note of condescension. It was the same tone he'd used in high school, the one that could make any achievement sound small. Arya's hand found Maya's, their fingers interlacing automatically. "We're both doing well," Arya said quietly. "Maya's in social work, and I'm teaching middle school English." "How noble," Brandon replied, and again there was that edge, that suggestion that their career choices were somehow quaint. "Though I imagine those fields don't pay particularly well. Student loans must be tough." Maya felt heat rise in her chest, that old familiar anger that she'd learned to suppress, to swallow, to hide. "We manage," she said shortly. Before Brandon could continue, a woman in a red dress appeared at his elbow. It was Jennifer Walsh, who had been Brandon's girlfriend in high school and apparently still was based on the diamond ring on her finger. She had always been one of his most enthusiastic participants in making the twins feel invisible. "Oh, you actually came," Jennifer said, her surprise seeming genuine and somehow worse than outright hostility. "That's so brave of you. I know high school wasn't exactly easy for everyone." The casual erasure of their specific experience, the way she made their torment sound like general adolescent difficulty, made Maya's teeth clench. "High school has its challenges for everyone," she managed to say. "Exactly." Jennifer brightened, missing or ignoring the tension entirely. "And now look at us, all grown up and successful. Brandon and I just closed on our third property. We're really getting into real estate investment. What about you two? Any exciting developments?" It was a dance Maya recognized, the subtle competition disguised as friendly catching up, the implicit measuring of worth by material success. She opened her mouth to respond, but Arya squeezed her hand. A silent warning. We're happy with our lives, Arya said simply. Brandon's eyes glinted with something that might have been amusement or might have been satisfaction. Well, the bar's open and there's plenty of food. You should mingle, catch up with people. We're doing a slideshow later with old photos. Should be fun. As he and Jennifer moved away, Maya and Arya stood together in the middle of the room, suddenly feeling very much like they had in high school, present but not belonging, visible but not seen. I need some air, Maya whispered. They made their way to a quieter corner near the windows that overlooked a small garden area. Other former classmates nodded politely as they passed, some with genuine warmth, others with the blank recognition of people who had never really known them and didn't intend to start now. This was a mistake, Arya said, her voice tight. We shouldn't have come. Before Maya could respond, a familiar voice cut through the ambient noise. Well. If it isn't the dynamic duo. They turned to find themselves facing Ryan Mitchell and Tyler Brooks, two of Brandon's closest friends in high school. Ryan had been the one who started the Scholarship Twins nickname that had followed them for years. Tyler had been the one who would accidentally on purpose knock their books out of their hands in the hallways. Sure, Ryan nodded, still smiling that knowing smile. Nothing to do with avoiding people or anything. Hey, speaking of avoiding, remember that time with the winter formal? Maya's stomach dropped. Of course, they would bring that up. Of course. That was a misunderstanding, she said, her voice harder now. Was it though? Tyler leaned in conspiratorially. I mean, Marcus did transfer pretty quickly after that. Must have been embarrassing for everyone involved. The cruelty was still there, Maya realized, just wrapped in a more socially acceptable package. They had grown older, gotten jobs, developed professional personas. But underneath, they were still the boys who had found entertainment in others' pain. We should go, Arya murmured, tugging at Maya's hand. But Maya was tired of running, tired of making herself small, tired of letting these people occupy space in her head rent-free. Actually, Marcus transferred because he got into a better school with a full scholarship. He's the CTO of a sustainable energy company now. We keep in touch. It was true. Marcus had reached out a year after graduation to apologize, even though he'd done nothing wrong. They'd become friends, bonding over shared experiences and mutual respect. His success had nothing to do with them, but Maya felt a small satisfaction in claiming it anyway, in disrupting the narrative Ryan and Tyler seemed to expect. Ryan's smile faltered slightly. Well, good for him. Always knew he was smart. Yeah, shame about the drama though, Tyler added. High school can be rough. There it was again, that passive construction that erased agency and accountability. High school can be rough, as if rough things simply happened, as if there weren't specific people doing specific harm, before Maya could formulate a response that wouldn't escalate into a scene. The lights dimmed and Brandon's voice came over the sound system. All right, everyone, if you can make your way to the main area, we're about to start the slideshow. Get ready for some serious nostalgia. The crowd shuffled toward the large screen that had been set up at one end of the room. Maya and Arya hung back, debating silently whether to stay or slip out while everyone was distracted. The slideshow began with the expected montage graduation photos. Candid shots from school events, athletic victories, prom pictures. The room filled with laughter and exclamations as people recognized their younger selves. Maya felt a pang of something complicated watching it all. They were in some of the photos, visible in the background or edges of group shots, but always peripheral, always just out of focus dot. Then a photo appeared that made Maya's breath catch. It was from the junior year talent show. She and Arya had performed a spoken word piece they'd written together about identity and belonging. They'd poured their hearts into it, used it as a way to process what they were experiencing, In the photo, they stood on stage, mid-performance, their faces serious and vulnerable. "Oh man, I remember this." Brandon's voice came through the speakers, narrating like it was all good fun. The twins did this super intense poetry thing. It was so serious. Like, we get it. High school is hard. Laughter rippled through the room. Not cruel exactly, but dismissive, reducing something that had been meaningful to them into a punchline. Maya felt Arya's hand tighten around hers. This was it. This was the moment they should leave. But something kept her rooted in place, some stubborn part that refused to give Brandon the satisfaction of driving them away again. The slideshow continued. More photos, more memories, more laughter. When it ended and the lights came back up, Maya made a decision. She wasn't going to hide in corners anymore. She wasn't going to let these people make her feel small. "I'm going to get a drink," she told Arya. "You want anything?" Arya looked uncertain but nodded. "Just water, please." Maya made her way to the bar, aware of eyes following her, of whispered conversations that might or might not be about her. She ordered 2 waters from the bartender, a young man who seemed bored by the whole affair. "Quite a crowd," he commented as he filled the glasses. 5-year reunion, Maya explained. "Everyone's very excited to relive their glory days." He grinned. "Let me guess. You're not one of the glory day people." "Not exactly." "Same. I graduated from Riverside 2 years ago. Couldn't pay me enough to go to my reunion when the time comes." There was something comforting in his casual honesty, in the acknowledgement that not everyone's high school experience was worth celebrating. Maya thanked him and took the waters back to where Arya waited. They found a small table near the windows and sat down, observing the party from a safe distance. It was easier this way, watching without participating, being present without being vulnerable. "We've been here 45 minutes, Arya said, checking her phone. "Think we can leave soon without it being obvious." Before Maya could answer, a woman approached their table. It took Maya a moment to recognize her Christina Park, who had been in their P English class. She'd never been part of Brandon's inner circle, but she'd never stood up to them either. She existed in that vast middle ground of people who watched things happen and did nothing. "Maya, Arya, hi," Christina said, her smile tentative. "I wasn't sure if you'd remember me." "Of course," Maya replied, unsure where this was going. Christina glanced back toward where Brandon and his group were gathered, then sat down uninvited. "I know this is random, but I wanted to say something. I've thought about it a lot since graduation." The twins exchanged a glance. "I should have said something," Christina continued, her voice low and urgent. "Back in high school, the way Brandon and his friends treated you, the way everyone just went along with it or pretended not to notice. It was wrong. I was a coward, and I'm sorry." The apology landed between them like something fragile and unexpected. Maya didn't know how to respond. It had been 5 years. What good did sorry do now? "Why are you telling us this?" Arya asked, not unkindly, but genuinely curious. Christina twisted her hands together. "Because I became a therapist. I work with teenagers now, and I see the same dynamics playing out. The bullying, the social hierarchies, the bystanders who know better but don't act. And I realized I was one of those bystanders. I let it happen. I was so worried about my own social status that I didn't think about what my silence cost you." Maya felt something shift in her chest, a small crack in the armor she'd built. "Thank you for saying that. It doesn't undo anything," Christina said. "I know that. But I wanted you to know that at least one person sees it clearly now, sees how wrong it was." She stood up, gave them a small sad smile, and walked away, leaving Maya and Arya sitting in stunned silence. "Did that just happen?" Arya whispered. Before Maya could respond, there was a commotion near the entrance. The doors had opened, and everyone turned to see who was arriving so late. 3 people walked in, and the energy in the room shifted immediately. Tension replacing casual festivity. The first was Principal Harrison, who had retired 2 years ago, but apparently had been invited to the reunion. The second was Ms. Rodriguez, the librarian who had given the twins sanctuary. The third was someone Maya didn't recognize at first, a tall woman in her 40s with an air of authority that commanded immediate respect. Principal Harrison made his way to the center of the room, Ms. Rodriguez beside him. Brandon moved toward them with his characteristic confidence, hand extended in greeting. Principal Harrison. Ms. Rodriguez, so glad you could make it, Brandon began. But the principal's expression stopped him mid-sentence. Mr. John, Principal Harrison said, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. I'm not here for the festivities. I'm here because there's something that needs to be addressed. Something that should have been addressed 5 years ago. The woman who had entered with them stepped forward, and Maya noticed she was carrying a folder. My name is Detective Sarah Williams, she said, her voice clear and professional. I'm with the County District Attorney's Office. The room went completely silent. Brandon's smile faltered. I don't understand. What's this about? Principal Harrison looked at him with an expression of profound disappointment. 3 months ago, I was contacted by the Cybercrime Division. They were investigating a series of anonymous harassment accounts that had been targeting young women at several schools in the district. During their investigation, they traced the IP addresses and digital footprints back to accounts created 5 years ago. Accounts that originated from this very school. Maya's heart began to pound. She looked at Aria, whose face had gone pale. Miss Rodriguez spoke up, her usually gentle voice firm. I kept records. Every time Maya and Aria came to the library upset, every incident they reported, every time they showed me cruel messages or screenshots, I documented it all. I tried to report it through proper channels back then, but I was told there wasn't enough evidence. The teenagers were just being teenagers. I was told not to make waves. She looked directly at the twins. I kept everything. Every email I sent to administration that got ignored. Every note I made about what I witnessed. And when the detective's office reached out asking about incidents at Riverside High from 5 years ago, I provided it all. Detective Williams opened her folder. Mr. Chun, the investigation has revealed that you created and maintained multiple anonymous accounts used to harass, defame, and cyberbully multiple students. The fake screenshots that circulated about Marcus Williams and Maya Chun, those were traced back to you. The photoshopped images. The false rumors spread through school forums. The coordinated campaign to socially isolate and humiliate the Chen twins. All documented. All traceable. Brandon's face had gone from confident to ashen. That's ridiculous. Those accounts could have been anyone. The digital forensics say otherwise. Detective Williams replied calmly. We have IP addresses from your home, your phone, cross-referenced with timestamps and content. We have recovered deleted messages and files from old servers. We even have witnesses who've come forward now, including Mr. Marcus Williams, who preserved the original communications that proved the screenshots were fabricated. Jennifer Walsh stepped back from Brandon, her face a mixture of shock and something that might have been dawning realization. This is insane, Brandon said, his voice rising. This was 5 years ago. High school stuff. You can't seriously be prosecuting something that happened in high school. Cyberbullying is a crime, Mr. Chun, Detective Williams said, and the statute of limitations hasn't expired. More importantly, we've discovered that your behavior didn't stop after graduation. You've been involved in similar campaigns against business competitors, ex-girlfriends, and anyone you perceived as a threat to your reputation. What started as teenage cruelty evolved into a pattern of criminal harassment. The room erupted in whispers. Ryan and Tyler had moved away from Brandon, distancing themselves. Jennifer was staring at her fiancé like she was seeing him for the first time. Principal Harrison addressed the room. "I failed as an administrator 5 years ago. I didn't listen. I didn't investigate. I prioritized the comfort and reputation of influential families over the safety and well-being of vulnerable students. That failure has haunted me every day since retirement. When Detective Williams contacted me, I provided everything I could to help her investigation. It's too late to fix what happened, but it's not too late for accountability." Maya felt tears streaming down her face, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of validation, of being seen, of someone finally saying out loud what she and Arya had known all along, that what happened to them wasn't their fault, wasn't something they should have been able to handle better, wasn't just teenagers being teenagers. Detective Williams approached the twins. "Ms. Maya-chan, Ms. Arya-chan, I want to formally apologize on behalf of the systems that failed to protect you 5 years ago. Your case is part of a larger investigation, and we'll be reaching out to gather your official statements. For now, I wanted you to know that we believe you, and we're pursuing justice." Arya was crying now too, her hand gripping Maya's so tightly it almost hurt. They stood together, these two young women who had been made to feel invisible, who had been gaslit into questioning their own reality, who had been told implicitly and explicitly that what they experienced wasn't really that bad. Brandon made a move toward the door, but two uniformed officers who had been waiting outside stepped in, blocking his path. "Mr. Chun, we need you to come with us for questioning," one of them said as they let him out. Past the former classmates who now looked at him with a mixture of horror and disgust. Past the girlfriend who was openly crying. Past the friends who suddenly couldn't meet his eyes. Brandon's mask finally cracked completely. He looked back at Maya and Arya with pure venom. "You couldn't just let it go, could you? You had to play the victim. You had to make everything about you." Maya found her voice, stronger than she expected. "We didn't do this to you, Brandon. You did this to yourself. We just survived you." After Brandon was taken away, the reunion dissolved into chaos. Some people left immediately, unwilling to be associated with what had transpired. Others gathered in small groups, processing, gossiping, rewriting their memories to distance themselves from someone who was now officially a criminal. Principal Harrison approached the twins, Ms. Rodriguez beside him. "I know an apology doesn't change what you went through," he said, his eyes wet. "But I am deeply, profoundly sorry. You deserved better. You deserved protection." Ms. Rodriguez pulled them both into a hug, something she'd done countless times in the library when they were teenagers, and the world felt too heavy. "I'm so proud of who you've become despite everything." As the evening wound down and people filtered out, Christina approached them again. "I meant what I said earlier. I'm sorry I didn't speak up, but I'm speaking up now. If there's anything you need, character witnesses, corroboration, anything, I'm here." Others came forward too, people who had witnessed things, who had always felt uncomfortable but hadn't known what to do. The twins found themselves at the center of something unexpected, not pity, but solidarity. A recognition that silence had costs, that inaction had consequences, that the time for looking away had passed. Detective Williams gave them her card before leaving. "I know this is overwhelming. Take time to process. When you're ready, we'll talk through everything formally. You're not alone in this anymore." It was nearly midnight when Maya and Arya finally left the community center. They walked to their car in silence, processing everything that had happened, everything that had been said, everything that had shifted in the course of a few hours. In the car, Arya turned to her sister. "Did that really just happen?" Maya laughed, a sound that was part disbelief, part relief, part something she couldn't quite name. "I think so. I think it really did. We came here, expecting to relive the worst parts of high school, Arya said. Instead, we got validation. We got believed. We got justice. We got seen, Maya added quietly. Finally, actually seen. They drove home through quiet streets, the city lights blurring past the windows. When they reached their apartment, they made tea and sat on their small balcony, looking out at the night sky. Do you think it changes anything? Arya asked. Like, does knowing that he's being held accountable change what we went through? Maya considered this. No, it doesn't erase the pain or the years we spent believing we were the problem. But it does something else. It validates our reality. It says that what we experienced was real and wrong and worth taking seriously. That's not nothing. What do you think happens now? Arya wondered. I think we give our statements. I think there's probably a trial or a plea deal. I think our names might be in the news. Maya paused. And I think we keep building our lives, but without carrying the weight of wondering if we somehow deserved what happened to us. Arya nodded slowly. I've been thinking about something. All these years, I've been afraid that what happened to us defined us. That we'd always be the bullied girls, the victims, the ones who couldn't handle high school. But tonight proved something different. What's that? That survival is its own form of strength. That becoming good people despite being treated badly is a choice we made every day. Brandon tried to break us, but we broke differently than he intended. We broke open instead of apart. Maya reached over and took her sister's hand. We did, didn't we? We became social workers and teachers. We helped people. We chose kindness even when kindness wasn't shown to us. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the weight of the evening settling into something that felt almost like peace. Over the following weeks, the case developed exactly as Detective Williams had predicted. The investigation revealed a pattern of behavior that stretched years beyond high school. Business rivals who had experienced mysterious smear campaigns, ex-partners who had found themselves the targets of revenge porn, employees who had spoken up about workplace issues only to be systematically discredited online. Maya and Arya gave their formal statements, walking through the painful memories with the support of victim advocates and counselors. The process was difficult, forcing them to relive trauma they'd worked hard to move past, but it was also cathartic. Every detail they provided added to the case, strengthened the evidence, validated their experience. The local news picked up the story. The headlines varied. Local businessman charged in multi-year cyberbullying scheme. High school harassment case reveals larger pattern of abuse. Victims find justice 5 years later. Some reporters wanted interviews. Maya and Arya declined most of them, but they did agree to speak with one journalist who approached the story with sensitivity and nuance. The article that resulted told their story without sensationalizing it. It talked about the failure of institutions to protect vulnerable students, the long-term impacts of sustained harassment, and the importance of believing victims when they come forward. It quoted Principal Harrison's admission of failure and Miss Rodriguez's persistent advocacy. Most importantly, it centered Maya and Arya's voices, their resilience, their choice to build meaningful lives despite what they'd endured. The responses were mixed. Some people reached out with support, sharing their own stories of bullying and validation. Others criticized them for not moving on, for pursuing charges so long after the fact, for what they perceived as vindictiveness. The twins learned to hold their truth steady regardless of others' opinions. Jennifer Walsh reached out through a mutual connection, asking if she could apologize in person. After some discussion, Maya and Arya agreed to meet her at a neutral coffee shop. Jennifer arrived looking smaller somehow, her confidence dimmed. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," she began. "I know I have no right to ask for your time." "You're right," Maya said directly. "You don't. But we're here anyway. Jennifer nodded, accepting the boundary. I've been doing a lot of thinking since the reunion. About the person I was in high school, the person I've been since. I was with Brandon for 8 years. I thought I knew him. I thought we were building a life together. You were engaged to him, Arya pointed out. You must have seen something. I saw what I wanted to see, Jennifer admitted. He was charming, successful, came from a good family. When people would tell stories about high school that made him sound cruel, I'd tell myself they were exaggerating, that everyone was dramatic in high school, that he'd grown up. I didn't want to see the truth. The truth that he was a bully, Maya said flatly. Yes, and more than that I was complicit. I laughed at his jokes. I participated in making people feel small. I knew what he did to you too, and I thought it was somehow justified because you were different from us, because you didn't fit into the world we built for ourselves. She twisted her hands together, much like Christina had. I can't take back what I did. I can't undo the harm. But I'm calling off the engagement. I'm testifying against him. And I'm in therapy, trying to understand how I became someone who could be so cruel and call it normal. Arya's expression softened slightly. What changed? Seeing it from the outside, Jennifer said. When the detective laid out everything he'd done, all the lives he'd damaged, I couldn't pretend anymore. And then reading your interview in the paper, hearing you talk about choosing kindness despite everything, I realized how backwards my values had been. Success isn't money or status or fitting in. It's being able to look at yourself and know you tried to do right by people. Maya studied her former tormentor's girlfriend, looking for signs of performance or manipulation. But Jennifer's distress seemed genuine, her reckoning real. I appreciate you telling us this, Maya said carefully. I'm glad you're testifying. But I need you to understand something. Your apology doesn't obligate us to forgive you. We don't owe you absolution or friendship or even understanding. You get to live with what you participated in, and we get to decide what, if any, space you have in our lives. I know, Jennifer whispered. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what was done to you. I see my part in it. And I'm sorry. After she left, Arya turned to Maya. Do you think people can really change? I think people can recognize harm they've caused and choose to do better, Maya replied. Whether that counts as change depends on if the better choices stick. Time will tell with Jennifer. The trial was scheduled for the following spring. In the months leading up to it, Maya and Arya continued their lives, but with a new lightness. The validation they'd received, the accountability being pursued, had lifted something they hadn't realized they were still carrying. Maya's work as a social worker took on new dimensions. She found herself advocating more fiercely for her clients, especially the young people who reminded her of herself, the ones who were told their experiences weren't that bad, who were blamed for their own victimization, who were expected to just get over it and move on. Arya's teaching evolved too. She created a unit on digital citizenship and bullying that went beyond the standard "don't be mean" messaging. She talked with her students about power, about systems, about the responsibility of bystanders. She shared her own story, appropriately edited, and watched as her students recognized themselves in it, some as victims, some as perpetrators, many as witnesses who had choices to make. The twins also started speaking at schools and community centers about their experience, not as cautionary tales, but as examples of survival and resilience. They talked about the long-term impacts of bullying, the importance of institutional accountability, the power of having even one person believe you. When the trial finally began, the courtroom was packed. Media, former classmates, victims from Brandon's post-high school campaigns, advocates and curious onlookers filled every available seat. Brandon sat at the defense table looking diminished, his expensive suit unable to restore the aura of power he'd once wielded so effectively. The prosecution built their case methodically. Digital forensics experts testified about the technical evidence. Marcus Williams flew in to testify about the fake screenshots and the harassment campaign that had driven him from Riverside High. Other victims told their stories. The business competitor whose reputation had been destroyed by a coordinated smear campaign. The ex-girlfriend whose private photos had been shared without consent. The employee who had been digitally stalked after reporting workplace discrimination. Ms. Rodriguez testified about the pattern she'd witnessed and documented, about the institutional failures that had allowed the behavior to continue unchecked. Principal Harrison took the stand and admitted his failures, his voice breaking as he acknowledged that his inaction had enabled years of harm. When it was Maya's turn to testify, she walked to the witness stand with Aria sitting in the front row behind the prosecution. She placed her hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth, a truth she'd been telling for 5 years, but that was finally being officially heard. The prosecutor was gentle but thorough, walking her through the timeline of harassment, the impact it had on her education and mental health, the ways it had shaped her life even after high school ended. Maya answered each question clearly, refusing to minimize or exaggerate, simply stating facts as she'd lived them. The defense attorney's cross-examination was aggressive, trying to paint Maya as oversensitive, vindictive, unable to distinguish between normal teenage behavior and criminal harassment. But Maya had prepared for this. She kept her composure, corrected mischaracterizations, and stood firm in her truth. "Isn't it true that you and Mr. Chun simply didn't get along?" the defense attorney asked. "That this is a personality conflict being blown out of proportion?" "No," Maya replied. "A personality conflict is when two people don't mesh well. What Brandon did was a sustained campaign to make my sister and me feel worthless, to isolate us socially, to damage our reputations, and to cause us psychological harm. That's not a conflict. That's abuse." When Aria testified, she brought the same steady clarity. The twins' testimonies, given separately but corroborating perfectly, painted a picture that was impossible to dismiss. The trial lasted 2 weeks. The jury deliberated for 6 hours before returning a verdict. Guilty on multiple counts of cyberbullying, harassment, stalking, and defamation. Brandon's face crumbled as the verdict was read, the reality of consequences finally penetrating his sense of invincibility. At sentencing, the judge addressed Brandon directly. "You used your intelligence and resources not to build people up, but to tear them down. You weaponized technology and social power against vulnerable individuals for your own amusement and advancement. The harm you've caused is extensive and lasting. This court finds that accountability is necessary not just for punishment, but for deterrence and for the message it sends to your victims that their pain matters." Brandon was sentenced to 3 years in prison with 5 years of supervised probation, mandatory counseling, and a permanent ban from creating anonymous social media accounts. He was also ordered to pay restitution to his victims for counseling costs and emotional damages. It wasn't enough to erase what had happened. No sentence could do that. But it was something. It was the system finally saying that what he'd done was wrong, was criminal, was worthy of consequences. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Maya and Aria stood together, Aria's hand in Maya's, and made a brief statement. "Today's verdict doesn't change what we experienced," Maya said, reading from notes they'd prepared together. "It doesn't undo the years of pain or the ways we had to rebuild ourselves. But it does something important. It tells other victims that their experiences matter, that they deserve to be believed. That accountability is possible, even when it feels impossible." Aria added, "We hope this case reminds institutions, schools, workplaces, online platforms that they have a responsibility to protect vulnerable people, to take harassment seriously, to act even when it's uncomfortable or inconvenient." Silence enables abuse. Action prevents it. They fielded a few questions, then left, declining offers for exclusive interviews or book deals. This wasn't about fame or profit. It was about justice and closure and the hard work of healing Dot in the weeks after the trial. Maya and Arya found themselves processing complex emotions. Relief, certainly. Validation, absolutely. But also a strange grief for the girls they'd been, for the innocence that had been stolen, for the ways their lives might have been different if someone had intervened earlier. They grieved together, supported each other, and slowly began to imagine a future not defined by what had been done to them, but by what they chose to do next. They started a non-profit organization focused on supporting victims of cyberbullying and advocating for stronger institutional protections. They partnered with Ms. Rodriguez, who had retired from the library, but not from caring about vulnerable kids. Together, they created programs that educated students, trained school staff, and provided resources for families. Christina Park joined their board, using her therapy background to develop mental health support systems. Even Jennifer Walsh volunteered, working behind the scenes in administrative roles, slowly rebuilding trust through consistent action rather than grand gestures. The organization grew steadily. They received grants, hired staff, expanded their reach. They testified before the state legislature in support of stronger anti-bullying laws. They consulted with schools on creating cultures of belonging rather than mere tolerance. And through it all, Maya and Arya continued their day jobs, Maya as a social worker, Arya as a teacher, because the work of helping individuals mattered just as much as the work of changing systems. 5 years after the trial, 10 years after graduation, Riverside High School invited them to speak at an assembly. It was a strange full-circle moment, walking back into those hallways not as students but as advocates. Not as victims, but as survivors, who had transformed their pain into purpose. They stood on the stage, where they'd once performed their spoken word piece to dismissive laughter. Now, 500 students sat in respectful silence as they told their story, not for sympathy, but as a roadmap for anyone experiencing something similar. "We're not here to tell you bullying is bad," Maya said. "You already know that. We're here to tell you that if you're experiencing it, it's not your fault. If you're witnessing it, you have power. If you're participating in it, you can stop." Arya continued, "The world will try to tell you that what you're experiencing isn't that serious, that you're being too sensitive, that you should just ignore it or toughen up. Don't listen. Your experience is valid. Your pain matters. And there are people who will believe you and help you." After the assembly, students approached them. Some wanted to share their own stories. Others wanted to report what they were seeing. A few perpetrators, surprisingly, wanted to talk about changing their behavior, about not becoming the next Brandon Chun. The school counselor, a new hire who'd been brought in specifically to improve student support, worked with Maya and Arya to develop a reporting system that actually worked, that took complaints seriously, that protected reporters and held wrongdoers accountable. It wasn't perfect. Systems never are. But it was better. It was progress. That evening, Maya and Arya sat in the same coffee shop where they'd received the reunion invitation years ago. They ordered the same drinks, sat at the same table, but everything was different. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't gone to that reunion?" Arya asked. Maya considered this. "I think the investigation would have happened anyway. Detective Williams was following leads regardless of us. But I'm glad we were there. I'm glad we saw his face when everything fell apart. I'm glad we got to stand up instead of running away." "Me too," Arya agreed. "It's strange, isn't it? The worst thing that happened in high school ended up leading to something meaningful. Not because the bullying was good or character building or any of that toxic nonsense, but because we chose to transform it. We didn't just survive, Maya reflected. We rebuilt ourselves into people who prevent others from having to survive the same thing. That's power he never had and never will.